Okay, good morning. As we jump back into our series of Revelation, last week we worked through these first 6 verses, and I just wanted to make one quick comment related to the very beginning of this, and then we're gonna look at the entire chapter just to kind of get it in perspective, and then we'll work our way through it. But when it talks about a great sign appeared in heaven, very often when people, they know nothing about Revelation, what they know is it's all symbolism and everything. And this is one of those chapters that's often thought of because it is this, woman clothed with the sun and the moon at her feet and the star. It's obviously picturesque. And so the point I want to draw your attention to, I mentioned it last time, that we read the Bible for what it actually says. We take what it says literally. And part of taking it literally is when it says this is symbolic, we don't say, well, we disagree, we think that's literal. No, it told us it's symbolic. So we know this is symbolism. And so my point is, very often as we've worked our way through the book, you'll have noticed something as it were such and such, or this was like something. Anything when you see like something or as or a sign or a symbol, we know those specifically are not the reality. They are something pointing to a greater reality. And so to me, this opening sentence here of chapter 12 is a great reminder that we should take the book literally unless it tells us not to. So that's just something I wanted to draw attention to. This chapter is probably one of the most, or maybe I should say this section, because 12 and 13 are both kind of like this, but they are the most symbolic. There's just huge amounts of symbolism in these next 2 chapters. The other thing about this chapter you'll see this morning is it's not linear. I mean, it's got stuff that's jumping around in it, and so it's much more difficult than just kind of walking your way straight through it, which we will do, but I'm going to say, okay, now this happened earlier, and I'll point that all out as we go. But this is a much more challenging chapter than most are. So with that said, I've asked Ben to read the entirety of chapter 12 for us, just so we kind of have the whole picture in our mind, and then we'll jump in.
And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she is a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of Christ has come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent in the wilderness to the place where she is to be nourished for a time and times and half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea.
Thank you. So last week we worked through these first 6 verses and we kind of identified who these main players are. So just a quick review of that. The woman clothed with the sun is symbolic of Israel. And you'll see that, I think, become even more clear today. He just talked about her child, male child is in heaven, but he goes after her offspring at the time of the tribulation. So we know that's not Mary's natural born children. Some people might claim that Mary is the woman. She's the one that gave birth to the male child, right? That would be in the real sense she did, but really it was the nation of Israel that brought us this God-man, Jesus, and who is being depicted here in this. So Israel is the woman. The dragon, we're told very explicitly, is Satan, the devil, the serpent. And then who is the child? It is Jesus. That is the male child that comes. We looked at that at length last time. He's the one that will rule with the rod of iron. So we talked about it last time. This really is Satan's long battle. I think I forgot to change the spelling of battle. Sorry. This is last week's slide. Satan's long battle against God and the woman. This has raged throughout really human history. And what that looks like is anti-Semitism. We talked about different aspects of that, went through a whole history of anti-Semitism, whether it's Esther or just all these different things. And one of the things I brought up last week was this book, Disinformation. I will just tell you, it's actually a difficult read, and I don't mean hard reading like as in words. I mean it's like hard to stomach. It's hard to get through it. But I really would actually want to commend it to you to read. I actually made the effort to go and get a copy at the library and bring it. I had forward of the book available for you last week. If you didn't read the whole thing but just read the first 4 or 5 chapters, you would get a good sense of this. And I don't want to read a lot, but I wanted to just highlight one thing, and this is in the forward. It talks about the anti-Semitism documented in this book is shocking. And it goes on to talk about, it chronicles Yuri Andropov of the Soviet Union and his anti-Zionism campaign and how they supported Islamic terrorism by creating this book called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And it was a fake book that was supposed to be written by Jews laying out a plan of how to take the world over. It was written by a czar, actually, in Russia. But it was used to turn people against the Jews. All fake, provably fake. It was used during World War II, leading up to that. It's being scattered by the millions of copies all over the Middle East by the Soviet Union back in this time frame, with guns to stop this advancement of what they called Zionism. This one sentence, though, says, atheistic communism sought out a handmaiden in radical Islam, with extremist Muslims exploited by the Soviet manipulators who hoped to besmirch Judaism and Israel and Christianity in America and the West. it's just, I mean, you can see Satan's hand all over this. I mean, he is attacking everywhere there's a potential for truth. He's coming after it with lies. Far too often, with tragic success, they promulgated not only acts of terrorism, but egregious acts of diplomacy, like the infamous UN Resolution 3379, declaring Zionism a form of racism. To support Israel is racist, this kind of a thing. So, and things haven't changed. I mean, this was written in 2013, so it's not that old of a book. But the point is, his strategies are very similar. And obviously, I'm not bringing this up from a political point of view. I mean, the Soviet Union no longer exists. I'm obviously not picking a fight with a non-existent, Soviet empire. I just think that nations of the earth are ruled by the ruler of this present age, and that is Satan. And he uses them to go after all who would follow God. And Israel is one of the groups of people that he primarily focuses attacks on, and we're going to see that unfold itself even further this morning. So, we looked at this last time. It speaks of Jesus speaking of Satan, saying he's a liar and the father of lies. And so, that's what this disinformation is. It's an incredibly strategic use of well-crafted, well-thought-through, and planned at an infinite degree lies. Planting a news story so they can quote it 30 years later. I mean, to that degree of deception. It's just phenomenal as you start to read through this. So, with that said, let's move into some new information. This is, I won't read back through it again. We just heard Ben do that. This is the next section. It says, now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. So this war that arose in heaven, there's question as to now when would this happen? Is this referring to back prior to the Garden of Eden? Like when Satan was thrown out? Or is this now, like in this moment in history that's being described? Or when is that war in heaven? And I don't want to answer that quite yet. I just want to kind of let this unfold, and we'll see if we can kind of nail that down a bit. But it talks about Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. So I think the first thing would be figure out who is Michael. Let's do that for a few minutes. This is Daniel chapter 10. And it's a long passage, and so for the sake of your comfort, I won't inflict my reading of that long of a passage on you. It talks about in the 24th day of the month, Daniel is there, and all of a sudden he sees this man clothed in linen. It's an angel, comes to him, and he has a belt of fine gold, and then it starts describing him. And I want you to simply see the description, because he's like this incredible being. His body is like beryl, his face appearance like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like gleaming burnished bronze, and the sound of his words was like the sound of a multitude, right? I mean, this is an impressive, incredible being that's approaching. And it says, and I, Daniel, saw him alone, and others were there, and they were scared, but they couldn't see. They just knew something was off, and they were afraid. And then it says there in verse 8, so I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. Nothing's happened yet. He's just seeing this angel, and he's so awesome, he just wipes him out. Okay, so I want you to get the picture that this angel is an amazing creature that is coming to him. And then he says he hears the sound of his words, and he fell on his face in a deep sleep. That's a poetic way of saying he passed out, right? With my face to the ground. And then he touched me, and his hands touched him, and he was trembling. on my hands and knees. So now he's gone from face down, passed out. He's kind of up and wobbly around on his hands, and nothing has happened. He's just seen this angel, right? Think who this is. This is Daniel, right? He's been in lions' dens, and he's seen some pretty phenomenal things, and this just wipes him out. Then it says this, and he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words." So he had been praying, asking the Lord to help him understand something, and this angel had been dispatched right away to come and give him an answer. Then it says in verse 13, "The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. This angel, this awesome being, has been blocked by this demonic angel, and they've been battling for 3 weeks while he's trying to get to Daniel." That's an amazing, what kind of angel can block this other angel for 3 weeks, right? So when we hear about this battle raging throughout time, we looked last week at, Esther's situation with Haman, and we looked at the final solution with Hitler and all those things. That's the human realm. This is another part of that. You have this mighty angel trying to bring a message to Daniel, and he can't get there for 3 weeks. That's a whole nother element of this battle that's going on. Then it says, "But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days. For the vision is for the days yet to come." So he's bringing a message, notice, about the Jews, and Satan does not want that message to get through. So he dispatches his troops to block the messenger who's going to bring a message about the Jewish people. This is a battle against Israel. He is trying to block this truth from getting through. Go ahead.
That verse 12 is one of my go-to verses.
Yes.
There's so much in that, but this is the way I read it. This is Kathy talk.
Okay.
Fear not, Chris. Fear not, Danielle. Fear not, everybody in this room. Because if you've done these things, it's conditional. If you understand who I am and you humble yourself for me, I heard you the first time.
Yeah.
For people who get discouraged and think that their prayers aren't being answered, that's what that says to me. I heard you the first time.
Yeah.
Why do we keep praying? Stay engaged, I guess. But he heard us the first time. I just think that's so
He does,
powerful.
yeah, he does hear us even when it doesn't seem like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all heard the old expression, God always answers prayers one of 3 ways, yes, no, or later. Wait, right? This was yes, but there was a spiritual warfare element happening that caused that delay. Again, according to God's plan, because otherwise he'd have dispatched Michael on day 1, right? Could have done that. He didn't. So God is ultimately fully in control here, but he allows these things to happen to make a point to us as we read through this stuff. All right, moving on to the next bit of this. "When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and was mute." He's so overwhelmed by what he just heard, and now he can't even talk. "And behold, one in the likeness of a man, a child of man, touched my lips." So this angel again touches him. "And I opened my mouth to speak. I said to him, 'Who stood before me?' O my Lord, by reason of this vision, pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength." So he's saying, I'm so scared of you. Notice the little L, Lord. He's not calling him God. He's calling him like master, or, it's respectful is what he's doing there. And he's like, I can't even hardly move. You've so wiped me out. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. Again, one having the appearance of a man touched me and strengthened me. So this angel keeps kind of helping him along, gets him up on his knees, touches his mouth, touches him and strengthens him so they can continue on in this conversation. And then verse 19, and he said, O man greatly loved. That's such an important thing to catch. He's so greatly loved, not by the angel, although I'm sure he may be, but he's referring to God. God is the one that greatly loves him. Fear not, peace be with you, be strong and of good courage. And as he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. So again, there's a spiritual warfare element here that he is being strengthened for the task he's being given by this angelic being sent by God. I think this kind of thing happens, by the way. It's just not seen by us. God still strengthens us for a task, and he still has angelic beings that are helps to us in ways that we don't know and things of that nature. The last part of this. And then he said, do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return and fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. By the way, when you read through this Daniel and other passages, this is the order in which these kingdoms appear. Currently there's Persia, and then next is going to come Greece, which is going to be Alexander the Great is coming next. So what he's talking about here is these princes of Persia or princes of Greece are these demonic forces that are really in control of these world kingdoms. So I don't know who the prince of the Soviet Union was, but he empowered them to do that which is in that book I was talking about a moment ago. And they're still here today. There's a prince of America and a prince of England and things, I would imagine. It says that when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But I tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these except Michael. Notice that it is Michael, your prince. So you've got the prince of Persia, the prince of Egypt, and do you think Daniel has his own prince? Or is he referencing that way because Michael is the prince of Israel? He's the one that's the assigned angel as a warrior angel on behalf of Israel. I think that's what that's saying. That's just an important thing to note. This is kind of this first glimpse into Michael. Who is this Michael? He's one that is an incredible angelic being. He's able to come and battle off these other angels, and he's been assigned to Israel. This is on into chapter 12. That was chapter 10. Chapter 12 tells us this. At that time, this is the time of the end. Let me do this. Yeah, here we go. At that time, if we skip past what's about to happen, he's telling us what that time is. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never has been since there was a nation till that time, right? So this is the time of the tribulation, the period of that 7 years, and really speaking specifically of the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. At the time of the tribulation, you could read that to say, shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge of your people. Now we get even a clearer picture that Michael is specifically assigned to the nation of Israel. That's who this Michael character is. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name has been found written in the book. I don't know if you've picked up on it a couple slides back. It talked about, let me tell you what is written in the book of truth. And now it's talking about those whose names were written in the book. And we know that as the Lamb's Book of Life. When I told the story at the very beginning last week, I said before anything began, they said, let us write down the name of everyone that will ever inhabit the kingdom in a book. That's why I say that, is because of verses like this. The fact that it's all pre-planned is the fact that it's all been written in this book of truth. So that's where I get those kind of ideas when I shared that with you last week.
Chris,
Go ahead.
a
little confused about the
Sure.
timeline.
Yeah.
So this is all happening after the 1,000-year reign?
No, this is all
Okay.
prior to.
Well, aren't most of the people that are found written in the book, they've been taken to heaven already?
Well, good question. Thank you for asking that. So who would be written in the book of life? Is, say, Daniel written in the book of life? Moses? Yeah, okay. You? Hopefully everybody in the room says yes, right? Paul, right? People saved during the tribulation. So the point is, the book of life is all people in every epoch of time who will inhabit the kingdom of heaven. So are many of the people written in the book of life in heaven now? Yes, but some of them haven't gotten saved yet. They're going to get saved during the tribulation. That's that number too numerous to number. So they haven't been written. They're written in before it all started, but they haven't gotten saved yet. So the church raptured out. But many Gentiles and Jews both who are in the book of life have not yet been saved at the beginning of the tribulation. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So this, Daniel, this is, way back prior to Jesus coming, and he's being told this is what's going to happen not 800 years later, but like 2,800 years later, something. At the very end, in this very last 3.5 years of this tribulation period, this time of trouble like there's never been before. Let me give you a couple other things about Michael. This is how we know Michael is an archangel. It's the reference that we hear or we see. We hear about Michael the archangel. This is it. It says, but when the archangel Michael contended with the devil, Satan, the serpent, was disputing over the body of Moses. Let's just pause for a moment. What in the world, right? We don't know. We have no idea what that's a reference to. Moses goes off into a mountain. He dies. It tells us that God buried Moses' body and no one knows where it is. And then the devil shows up and he's going to steal away the body for whatever reason we don't know. Whether it's to make a false idol out of it, so they have a shrine somewhere to it. He's going to try to hide it from God so he can't resurrect. We have no idea what Satan's motive is here. But Michael is sent to say, no, leave the body alone. That's all we know. But the point is, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, the Lord rebuke you. This would be his trump card, so to speak, in fighting against Satan. The thing to notice is that he's not necessarily more powerful than Satan, but he has the power of God behind him and therefore is able to overcome whatever Satan wants to do. So this is why we know that Michael's an archangel. Last thing, kind of interesting, little speculation, but it's kind of an interesting thing. 1 Thessalonians 4, 14 to 18 is a passage we often think of related to the rapture. It says, for since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. For this we declare to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, we will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with the cry of command, with the voice of an archangel. It's the only other use of that term. And with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we who are alive and left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. Therefore encourage one another with these words. This is one of the famous rapture passages, and it's describing us who have remained alive. We're caught up together with our fellow brothers and sisters that have deceased prior to us. Now, they are caught up first, and then we are caught up. But it's this voice of an archangel is part of the events that happen around that. The speculation is, might this be in part what this war is about in heaven? We see this messenger trying to get to Daniel, and he's being blocked by the prince of Persia. Well, here comes millions of saints coming out of Satan's world at the call of an archangel. This may be what spurns on this war in heaven. And as Michael is there, and we know that he's there at the rapture, and we don't know. My point is, we really aren't told when this war happens, but we know it's at least somewhere in that time frame. So I just wanted you to see that, to be aware of the connection to that. So the way I would answer that question, who is Michael? He is the archangel. Who is a warrior angel assigned to Israel. I think that would be an accurate description of Michael. So if we go back to our main passage, I'll leave that up so you can write, but it says, "Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon," Satan, "and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven." So at this point, whenever this battle ensues, Michael and his angels are now there's no longer a place for them in heaven. They are put out. So might this be prior to the Garden of Eden? It seems like it is, because the demons and the angels are cast down at that point. But there's reasons why I'm hesitant to tell you that, and you'll see those as we move through. So this brings us to this issue of, when did Satan fall? We obviously know it's prior to the garden and after his creation, right? Somewhere in that intervening period. We're not really told when he was created. So there's really two passages that tell us about Satan's fall. So we'll read those, and that I'm going to ask Ben if he'll help me out some. Go ahead.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the earth, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
Thank you. Let me get this thing to work. There we go. You notice these. I will ascend, I will exalt, I will sit upon the mount of the congregation, I will ascend to the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. This is his moment of pride. He's so risen above all other angelic beings and beauty that it goes to his head, and I will, right? Somebody mentioned once that this is one of the best illustrations of divinely inspired scripture, because if any human being would have written this, the very last one would say, I will be greater than the Most High. That's what we would do. I mean, you've all seen professional wrestlers. I am the greatest and all this stuff, right? You're always better than. No one says, I'm as good as so-and-so, unless the so-and-so is like really awesome. Like, I'm as good as Michael Jordan. Well, obviously not, right? But I would never say I'm greater than Michael Jordan, because that would be, well, they're both foolish. But do you see what I'm saying? It's so obvious that I'm not greater, but I could maybe say I'm as good. And so I think that's what he's saying here. He's been made by the Most High. Clearly he can't be greater than what's made him. So I will be like the Most High. Just an interesting thing to see that there's some truth in that, meaning he can't be like the Most High, but he's sharp enough to know that would be even beyond him to say I'd be greater than. So interesting thought. Go ahead.
This sides of the north, heard a commentary on that, whether there's anything to it, maybe you haven't heard it, or it could be, like they said, the sides of the north would be like something like the North Star, of Satan's dwelling place? Have you ever heard anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I'll do some looking and see what I see on that. Because it wasn't the primary focus of the morning, I didn't take the time
Yeah,
to look,
right,
but
sure.
yeah, it would be interesting to see what that is. So here's the next one. We'll do these two short sections in Ezekiel and then keep moving.
Son of man, raise a lamentation over the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus says the Lord God, You were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering: sardius, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, emerald, and carbuncle. And crafted in gold were your settings and your engravings. On the day that you were created, they were prepared. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were on the holy mountain of God. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked. You were blameless in your ways from the day that you were created, till unrighteousness was found in you.
Let me pause this there for a moment before I keep going. So first he says, Son of man, this is Ezekiel, rise a lamentation over the king of Tyre. That's like an actual person, the king of Tyre. He's the king of a nation called Tyre. Tyre and Sidon you've probably heard of. So he starts talking about the king of Tyre, and then he, like, you were in Eden, the garden of God. Well, the king of Tyre wasn't in Eden. I mean, that was thousands of years earlier, right? So that's how we know this has to not be talking about the actual king of Tyre. So that can be confusing. It doesn't say Satan. It doesn't say the serpent. It doesn't say any of that. But that is the only one we know of who was this guardian cherub who was blameless, and then right at the very end, until unrighteousness was found in you. What's that? I will be like the Most High. That's the unrighteousness found in him. This pride rose up within him. So let's do the next section and we'll...
In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence in your midst, and you sinned. So I cast you as a profane thing from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O guardian cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I exposed you before kings to feast their eyes on you. By the multitude of your iniquities, in the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. So I brought fire out from your midst. It consumed you, and I turned you to ashes on the earth in the sight of all who saw you. All who know you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have come to a dreadful end and shall be no more forever.
Highly confusing passage, right? That literally is what we're told of Satan's fall. So there is this destruction of him. It's not obviously going away and he would never exist. He has been existing, and even when he goes into hell, the lake of fire, he will exist. And by the way, you probably all know this, but Satan's never been to hell. Satan doesn't run hell. He doesn't have his demons whipping people in the back that are chipping coal and all the imagery that you've all seen, or all of us have seen. Hell, the lake of fire, is prison created for Satan and his angels that have fallen with him, and then all who would follow with them. So he will go there someday, and once he is, he will never leave, and he will be the lowest creature there, being punished at the most severe degree. And I think that's what these are poetic ways of saying that. And it is a process, meaning he's been cast out, but he's not obviously put to an end and shall never be anymore. That would be all the way at the end. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Just that verse 15 says, you were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you.
Right.
I thought, all right, he was created for the purpose, the end times of folks. He was created imperfect, though up to that point. I mean, he was created to fail.
No, it says you were blameless in your ways. So he was created perfect, and then pride arose. So, but yes, as I talked about last week, because the whole thing is a plan from the beginning.
Sure.
Yeah, we will make this one angel higher than all the rest, and he will rebel.
But all the other angels, except for the ones under his dominion, realize who's in control, like a Michael, an
Yeah.
archangel, and all the rest.
What's phenomenal is if you're standing in the presence of God and you see God, and there's this other angelic being trying to convince you through deception to join him, how convincing do you have to be to convince the angels to turn on the God that they're looking at? That's pretty,
Convincing.
yeah, he's the greatest salesman in the history of the universe. Let me go here first, and then I'll come back to you.
This has always been confusing to me, and maybe it doesn't matter, and that's a perfectly good answer
Yes.
if it doesn't matter. But when we have the scripture, some of it's out of order, and your books are out of order.
Sure.
But pretty much, creation, and then the patriarch,
Right.
all the way up through. This thing, you'd have to really, to find the story of Lucifer and his fall, you have to really
Look.
hunt.
And dig,
Because I
yeah.
don't know if I could, if you'd asked me to do this morning, I don't know if I could have found it.
No.
I knew it's, and it's
We know it's
very-
there, but where, I don't know. Yeah, no, I know.
Is there a reason why, this is like a footnote or
Yeah,
something? It was just-
because
it's so important.
Satan's a footnote. I often find myself not wanting to capitalize the name just out of something. I don't know. I mean, I really think that's it. It is such backstory to the point of Scripture. It's footnote because the point is Jesus.
You don't want us to focus on.
Yeah,
that.
it's like don't study Islam. Don't study Buddhism. No. Study the truth. I've used the analogy before, and I don't want to repeat myself too much. Brenda worked at the bank and dealt with currency constantly, and you've seen them. They can count faster than the counting machine, and then backs up 3 bills, and that one's fake. What? She found 2 or 3 counterfeits at Mach speed through the bills because you know that's not right if all you deal with is truth. So that's how you do it. So why would we not have more on Satan? Because we don't need to be focused there.
And that's just have the faith of the child. The child would not have all of this
Right.
information until you're in an age or a time to be able to discern and like you've done and like you've helped us to learn.
The other thing about it is I've said it 100 times, there are gold nuggets buried in that word. But he wants us to go dig for them. You know, get your fingernails dirty, digging through and panning for the gold. And when you find them, it's just awesome. So I'm not calling the word muddy. I'm just saying the analogy is there. Okay, Steve in the back.
So the verse that struck me is where it said, "You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor." And the immediate thing that hit me was in our current environment, that describes
Yeah.
most politicians. And then you said
Yeah.
Satan was really a good salesman. I mean, he's really a politician.
Yeah.
He was very good at it.
That's why
It's
you
just
use
such a
government
great
systems.
statement.
Yeah.
For the sake of your splendor, you corrupted your wisdom. It's constant today.
But yes, but when I read that, I would have never thought politicians. I would have thought Hollywood or something because they are the ones of splendor, right?
But they're all trying to get approval. from
Yeah.
others.
No, it's like the joke is politics is show business for ugly people, right? you can't get into the movies, so you go into politics, and it's all acting, either place. Sorry, maybe that's an inside politics joke, but anyway.
That must be your previous sales.
Yeah, that was my other life. Sorry.
Was Satan the king of Tyre?
There was a real person called the
Right.
King of Tyre.
But like the Prince of Persia that
Oh, I got what
Michael
you're- yeah.
went up against? Was Satan the king of Tyre? And are the kings here in verse 17 the additional heaven
I gotcha.
spiritual leaders?
So, for example, you've got the Prince of Greece. That's a satanic driven or a demonic being. Might Satan have been the one who was
Assigned to
influencing the
Tyre.
king of
Yeah.
Tyre? Yeah, that's very possible. Don't know. He's also another time in the scripture, Satan. He's talking to Pharaoh, and he's talking to Satan, but he's talking to Pharaoh. So, like Pharaoh has taken, Satan has taken on Pharaoh as his current minion of choice, so to speak. So, yeah, that's very likely why that's that way. All right. When did Satan fall? To answer that question, I'm going to say it this way. Before the fall of man, obviously, but we're not told the precise time. We don't know. I do think there's a view called the gap theory. I'm not going to get into it in detail, but it talks about God created everything and Satan and the angels and all of that, and then there was a fall, and then you get to Genesis 1:2. So there's a big gap between verse 1 and verse 2. I'm not one that buys into that. If that were the case, there could be a long gap between creation and the fall of Satan. I would be more of the view that angels were created during that 6 days of creation. And we don't know on day what, 72, 13, we don't know what day after creation he comes to the garden and talks to Adam and Eve. Might it have been a week later, 6 months later? It's not day 8 necessarily, it doesn't tell us. So it could be a couple months down the road. We don't know. So I'm more of the line of thinking that the fall happened somewhere after creation week and prior to him coming to the garden. So let's keep moving. There's no way we'll finish, but that's all right. We're here next week. We'll finish it then. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. He was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, and the deceiver of the whole world. Again, world's greatest salesman. Not that salesmen are all deceivers. Since I'm a salesman, I shouldn't say that. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Now we know that occurred prior to the tribulation, because they're here right now, right? So that's what's confusing about this. Some of this had to have happened back at the fall, or prior to the fall. Let's go to the fall of man. Let's keep moving our way through this passage. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, so this is just the next set of verses, now salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. That's current, right in the sequence of the events of Revelation. This is what's happening right then. We just read about that, right? In chapter 11. Where is Satan now? Let's think through that. Where is Satan currently at? He's been thrown out of heaven, right? That's what we just read. Zechariah 3, 1-4. We looked at this a while back. These are the two lampstands. One of them, Joshua the high priest. Not lampstand. Yeah, the two candlesticks, the two witnesses, we talked about them. There were these two golden lampstands, and one of them historically was Joshua. It says, then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord. That would be Jesus in the Old Testament, by the way. And Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. Satan is standing there beside Jesus, accusing Joshua. And the Lord said to Satan, the Lord rebuke you. Do you remember what Michael said to Satan when they were fighting over the body of Moses? The Lord rebuke you. The Lord just said, the Lord rebuke you. Note, the Lord, okay, Yahweh This is all caps, all big. This is Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Satan, and Yahweh rebuke you. I just think that's fascinating that when God speaks to Satan, he says the same thing that Michael says.
He's reminding Satan who God is.
Yeah. That's amazing. The Lord rebuke you, O Satan. The Lord has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. There is this battle between them over Jerusalem. You see that in the news every day. Is not this a brand plucked from the fire? Now Joshua was standing before the angel of the Lord, clothed with filthy garments. I think that's figurative because he's in doing his priestly duties. I doubt they were filthy in real life. And the angel said to those who were standing before him, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, behold, I have taken your iniquity away from you. I will clothe you with pure vestments. This is very symbolic of what happens at salvation, right? We are clothed in filthy rags, our best works, and those are taken away, and we're dressed in the righteousness of Christ. That's what we see happening here. So it's just interesting that this is obviously after the fall of man, obviously after Satan has been cast down, and there he is in the presence of Yahweh and Jesus accusing Joshua the high priest. Job, famous passage, we're all familiar with it. Now there was a day when the sons of God, angels, let me back up and read that way. Now there was a day when angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also was among them. And Yahweh said to Satan, from where have you come? Satan answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro, and from walking up and down on the earth, to and fro on the earth. So he's moving around on the earth, right? And now he's up in heaven speaking with God. This is post-fall. He's already been cast out, and there he is standing in the presence of God having a conversation. I want you to see this. We'll wrap this up here pretty quick. So this is back to our main passage. And now I heard the voice in heaven saying, and then it's this salvation and power and all this has come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accused them day and night before God. That's what we just read. We read about him accusing. We know he accused Job. He accused Joshua. He's accusing them during this whole time of human history. He's right there now accusing you. That's what Satan does. I don't think, and he's not omnipresent. He's not always there doing that. He's here. He's to and fro on the earth. He's going back and forth. He's accusing. Oh my goodness! I just saw Chris do this. You can't possibly love him. And Jesus, our great defense counsel, steps in and says, "Yeah, you're right, but me, but I have paid for that." Right? That's what's going on right now as we're sitting here speaking. So where is Satan now? He's back and forth from earth to heaven. He's ruling the earth and accusing the saints. That's what he's doing right this moment. When did Satan fall? I'll back up to it. He fell before the fall of man, and we're not sure exactly when. He will eventually be banned from heaven entirely during the tribulation period. That has not occurred yet. He is still there accusing. What they're celebrating is almost like a second casting out. He's been cast down, but he still has some access. He's going to lose that access and will no longer be allowed to accuse. That is part of what's happening in this great battle. I'm going to save the rest of this for next time. Is next week our breakfast? Okay, so in 2 weeks. That's a good cliffhanger. All right, everybody done with this one? I'll back up. we're going to talk about this more next time, but I want to end with something with you. Are we done there?
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to read this. What does Satan making war against the saints look like? What would that look like? And I just made a short list. It's temptation, opposition, persecution, terrorism, anti-Semitism, murder, both personal and state-sponsored. Those are all things that are spiritual warfare, Satan's attack on saints. And yet, temptation, opposition, persecution look spiritual. Terrorism, anti-Semitism, and murder don't. But they're all part of the battle. And we'll see all that next time.
You say all those things, is that part of accusing the saints?
No, it's part of his battle against.
So next time, can you do it? I don't understand what accusing the saints means if you can get
Oh.
context of it.
You're a bad guy. Look what you looked at yesterday, or look what you thought this morning, or it's that. It's him constantly bringing your sin
Discouragement.
to God. He's accusing you before God, not to you. I mean, you get that, but that's just discouragement.
So that's really a spiritual realm.
It's a spiritual realm issue.
Okay.
What he's trying to do is convince God not to save you. Which obviously doesn't happen, but he's not given up. He's been doing it for thousands of years.
Well, he's kind of trying to convince God that we're not worth saving.
Yes, that's
And
exactly
God
what he's
already
doing.
knows that.
I've taken way more time than I should have, so let me quickly pray for us, and then I will hang out and talk after. Thank you for your patience. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. It seems like I say that every week, but I'm just so blessed by all that you've hidden away for us. Just the amazing way that the more we dig, the more we see, and the more majestic and glorious you are. Lord, I'm reminded of this morning as we see Satan and his pride about his beauty, and we see that in our culture and the worship of beauty and all of that. There's the passage that says the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord, or the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's what he lost that day. He stopped fearing you and said, I will be like you. Lord, that is something we all are capable of doing. And it would sound more like, I'm doing fine without you. Lord, please work in each of our lives to have us never think that way, even casually or passively, by thinking we can get through life without you. Remind us regularly of our utter dependence on you. Lord, we pray that you bring us back safely next time, and we'd be able to continue to study in the weeks to come and learn more and more about you. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.